Hello, good evening. Welcome everybody to the evening which is probably our most anticipated evening of the year here at the IWM, because it's inspiriting, it's joyful, and let's face it, it's fun as well. And we meet remarkable people on this evening, a whole string of remarkable people who, not least, of course, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, Mieke Verloo. So I want to tell you that this evening we have 23 former awardees of Emma Goldman. So the Emma Goldman Awards. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you so much for coming and making the effort. We really, really appreciate it, and you won't be disappointed. And one of the many things that we will give you in return after the event itself is a flying dinner down in the canteen, which I highly recommend for everybody. But along with the 23 former awardees, we also have 15 current awardees who we're going to learn all about in just a few minutes. But we also have 2 keynote speeches, and the first one will be delivered, although Mieke is going to introduce both speakers herself. The first one is Florian Duijsens, who teaches at Bard College in Berlin, but also in the US. And then secondly, we have Marta Rawłuszko from the University of Warsaw, the Institute of Applied Social Studies. So we're looking forward to hearing from them. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to the mastermind behind all of this, our non-residential permanent fellow who we all adore and who brought the FLAX Foundation into our lives, Mieke Verloo.
I'll get you. Yeah. Okay, there's nothing nicer than to stand in front of an audience like this, no? I hope you all get that pleasure at some point, and maybe you already had. So if you had, I hope you will continue to have that experience, because it's really very, very nice. So it's more or less exactly 5 years after we started the first award ceremony, the inaugural award ceremony. And at that time, the FLAX board also was pioneering, like, oh, we had this idea of doing it in a very different way, and would it work? Would people actually want such an award? I know it's a stupid question, but it was in our mind. And so it went well, and then we continued. It's 5 years ago, but we don't have 5 years of awards because COVID came in between. In fact, people went back from this award ceremony, also some with high fever. It was at the end of February 2020. So then, of course, yeah, we couldn't do it February the year after that, so that became September. And now we're back to our spring season, because we think it belongs to what we're doing, that you do it in spring, no? When everything is rejuvenated and everything that you think wasn't functioning or growing or alive is suddenly popping out everywhere, no? So I think that's the spirit that we want to keep. We're still doing the same things, honoring persons that people get because they keep on being alive in times when it's increasingly difficult to engage with the world against the grain. And all of you that received this award did that, and probably a lot of people that came to the award ceremony are also like in the same spirit here. And in these times where I think evil pops up in even more brutal ways, in even more places than ever, it's more important than ever to come together and to create at least this space and the space tomorrow for engaging with solidarity, with scholarship, with engagement, with justice. So on the board, on behalf of the board, I also welcome you very warmly to this, hoping to strengthen you in what you're doing already, and hoping to be able to support you on this. I think when we started as a foundation, we had also more idea that the neoliberalism of universities, the academic capitalism going on, the ongoing competition where everyone is set up against each other all the time, we need to counter that with something that doesn't do that, is still going on, right? But there is even more reason to do that, because feminists and intersectional feminists especially are in the crosshairs of these evildoers. So it's important that we support each other, and that's all I'm going to say about it. No? We have two talks. First, we turn to the past. We have always done that, have one talk that is more looking into the past, and at our first award ceremony, it was Florian Duijsens from the Dead Lady Show in Berlin that talked to us about Emma Goldman, because we had named it after her, and we needed to know more about her and have like a joint knowledge about her. And today he will speak about Dorothy Thompson, and his talk is called "It Can Happen Here." So I'm not sure that's the very optimistic part of today. But then we will have the second talk by Marta Rawłuszko on futures, on feminist futures. And Marta is a very engaged scholar from Warsaw, the type that not just does research, but also intervenes in society in beneficial ways. You can check her out. You can check our website. You probably did that. So I have the chance to work with her in a project at the moment called Kindle, which works on research on feminist responses to anti-gender campaigns in Europe. And as part of that, we look at what people doing these feminist responses, how they look at feminist futures, and this will be the base of her talk. So we're not just making it up, right? It's based in actual activist experience. So without further ado, Florian, can I ask you to start?
The remote. Can I come and pick that up?
Can you see it, Marta? Otherwise you can...
Okay, oh yeah, the mic is working. It's good. Hi, everybody. Got this wonderful clipboard, great. So, there we go. So I've been doing this with some friends in Berlin for 10 years. It's an irreverent name, right? None of these women that we've talked about on stage would ever call themselves ladies. Except ironically, we have 3 rules for the Dead Lady Show, which is a bilingual event that we've been putting up every 2 months or so in Berlin, and it's got offshoots in New York and in Belgium. And there's 3 rules: that women have to be dead for at least 6 months. You know, that for the dust to settle a little bit, they have to basically not have identified as a man. We're open to any other genders. And the third one is not in the name, but it's implied that they can't have been fascists, which will become relevant in a moment. Okay. In 1921, the Viennese were rioting because the League of Nations had denied them a request for a loan. And watching as these fancy shops all along the Opernring were being looted and bricks crashed through the windows of Hotel Sacher, foreign correspondent Dorothy Thompson wrote, "It was like seeing some mild-mannered, polite gentleman whom you'd known for years go suddenly, ravingly, hideously mad." One rider took her aside and said, "Miss, I think maybe you should take that fur coat off. We don't want to hurt you, and it might excite somebody." She learned her lesson: never wear a fur coat to a revolution. Dorothy had arrived in Vienna a year earlier, aged 26, as a freelancer for American newspapers. right as the former imperial capital was experimenting with social democracy. The Wohnungsamt told her that she could have an apartment with a kitchen or a bath. Not both. She chose the only hot bath in all Austria. Her reports on the city's social welfare programs and low-cost housing, like the Karl Marx Hof, resonated with the work she'd done in the US prior to reinventing herself as a journalist, organizing for the suffragist movement in Western New York, where she'd also grown up, and later working as the publicity director for the pioneering social unit in Cincinnati, which was a mutual aid experiment with free healthcare and sort of preventative education. Yeah, free healthcare. A program that delivered real results during the influenza pandemic. Of course, medical providers and corporations at the time painted the project as damaging their profits, and the Bolshevist revolution put an end to such experiments in the US. But Dorothy wrote, at the time, the Russian Revolution seemed the only bright light on the horizon. Here, something was unfolding which had the elemental force of nature itself, sweeping away the old and outworn and creating in blood a whole great new order of things. At this point in Vienna, she hadn't made it to Russia yet, but Vienna had plenty excitement to offer. She met her mentor, Genia Schwarzwald. I don't know if you've heard of her. I mean, of course. The Jewish humanist activist who was one of the first women in Europe to earn a PhD, and at whose salon Dorothy would meet Thomas Mann, Oskar Kokoschka, Karl Michaelis, like everybody at the time. For her newspapers, Dorothy met even more people. She interviewed the likes of Freud, Atatürk, Alexandra Kollontai, and plenty of endangered royalty. When the King of Albania, Zog, needed a wife, her headline read, "Job offers, annual revolution, big game shooting, and blood feuds, as well as crown. Monarch must finance state." After the former Austro-Hungarian emperor attempted a coup, she also scored the only interview with his pregnant wife, Zita, sneaking into the heavily guarded castle where she'd been imprisoned by posing as a Red Cross nurse. And that settled it. She became the Philadelphia Public Ledger's Central European correspondent with a salary and an office. And that same day, she received a telegram. Her father had died. Her father had been a very poor Methodist minister who she claimed could pray a bird off a tree, whereas her mother had died when Dorothy was just 8. The word around town was that she died in childbirth. What actually happened was that her own mother, so Dorothy's grandma, felt that they couldn't afford to have another child, so she'd secretly given her a kind of pennyroyal tea, which caused her to hemorrhage. Central Europe offered distractions from Dorothy's grief, especially a man called Joseph Bard, a Jewish-Hungarian journalist who, oh wait, this is where she met him, in the lobby. And that's Joseph. He was a Jewish-Hungarian journalist who her friend Rebecca West, the British author, described as not an unkindly soul, the equivalent of a hairdresser with a naive passion for fancy vests. I think we've all met a few of those. A terrible cheat, like he would always cheat on her and then blame her inhibitions, like she was old-fashioned. And he was also forever writing this epic tome in 3 different languages. Once again, we've met this person. And Dorothy wasn't sure about marrying him, telling a friend, "Joseph, you see, wouldn't like to go off to China with a few dollars in his pocket. He looks in upon life, finding it in his own self and soul. And I, finding so little in my soul, go eagerly snatching at new experiences, new sights." Having kids wasn't on her mind either. Nothing in me tells me I should. Indeed, I believe that if I had them, they wouldn't be very nice. I have only one loud and never-ceasing call, and that's to preserve the integrity of my own self. Why? What's there to preserve? I'm not an artist or a poet. Why do I fight for this third-rate life of mine as though it were of consequence? I do nothing with it, and it breaks my heart. Dorothy Dorothy and Joseph. Well, was a stormy love affair. There's so many dramatic reveals I want to be able to show you. Indeed. Indeed. It's the Habsburgs. They've come for their revenge. Oh, it's doing that. Yeah, it's doing the blinking light that says the lamp has blown. Or at least that's. Okay. Well, do you want the version of the story without any pictures? Oh, I know. Okay, there's one little bit of audio which I guess you will get at some point. But, yeah? Okay. It is what it is. So Dorothy and Joseph were together for 6 years, and the second she slept with a colleague, he called it off. He was like, "You could have given me syphilis." I'm like, what? Anyway. The breakup was protracted, awful, leaving her alone in her massive new place in Berlin. It was 1925, hyperinflation was over, Germany was entering its Weimar era, and she'd become chief of the Berlin Bureau, the first woman to do so, though she decried that, quote, specious feminism of the women's magazines, which persists in finding cause for jubilation every time a woman becomes, for the first time, an iceman, a road surveyor, or a senator. The see what the little darling has done now attitude ought to be outlawed. In busy Berlin, dinner parties included the likes of Klaus and Erika Mann, Kurt Weill, Lotte Lenya, Einstein, Vita Sackville West, everybody. But the night her divorce came through, the guest of honor at her 34th birthday party, which it also happened to be, was the visiting American writer Sinclair Lewis, who was hot off a couple of bestsellers at the time. His family called him Hal, but his friends called him Red because of his hair and the chronic acne lesions across his face, which seems unkind, but there you go. By 3 a.m. that same night, he had asked her to marry him. Never mind the fact that he was still married to somebody else. And then he just kept asking. Like in taxis and nightclubs, he followed her onto a plane to Vienna. She described him as, quote, quite inevitably about to be the chief factor in my destiny. He's a very curious and demonic person, hard-drinking, blasphemous, possessed, I often think. Rebecca West, again, didn't think of him as human, only as a great natural force like the aurora borealis. When she finally made it to Russia in 1927, she wrote to Hal saying, "This place is driving me crazy. Every day I change my mind about everything I'd made it up about the day before. I don't eat much, sleep very little, work all the time, and feel gorgeously well. If only you were here in the evening so I could put my cheek against yours." Another letter ends, "I warn you, Hal, I'm going to turn domestic on you and occasionally go to Tibet." She eventually gave up her Berlin job and apartment to shack up with Hal in Naples. Imagine a villa, okay? Gorgeous. Here, Dorothy would turn her articles about Russia into a book, her first. And in the US, meanwhile, the press had caught wind that Hal's wife was in Reno. And if you know anything about the history of American divorce law, you know that she was about to be granted a divorce. So he skipped off to London to set up the wedding and to buy a $2,000 caravan. Oh, here we go. This is Joseph. See, now I can catch you up on what happened. This is her, well, this is where her house used to be in Berlin. This is Berlin. This is her. Yeah, it's a good one. This him, that's the Brandenburger Tor. That's him asking her to marry him. That's her in Russia, and that's them together. And this is the front door of the Naples house, less impressive than yeah. I know, I didn't want you to miss this. The first book, and this is where they got married. And this is the caravan that he bought for their honeymoon. Suddenly, Dorothy was a famous man's wife, writing to a friend, "I feel as though I should never write anything again, neither reports on Russia nor sonnets to record the ironic victories of the soul. I cook, my dear, in the caravan, but I cook well." Back to America they went. This was the Prohibition era, and as a professional alcoholic, Hal was suddenly less inclined to go out because there would never be anything to drink. In Vermont, they found the home of Hal's dreams called Twin Farms, and Dorothy dedicated herself to renovations in the garden, planting more than 3,000 bulbs that first year. She also became a stepmom and adored Hal's much ignored first son, Wells. Still, she was no housewife, and soon she was going on lecture tours, talking about Russia, Germany, European politics, and soon she was also pregnant. Hal was drunk when baby Michael arrived, and after giving birth, Dorothy went into this wonderful rant, which I've had to cut down terribly, so just imagine it going on and on and on. Here we are, in the year 1930, with every possible advancement of science already upon us in every conceivable field, and yet nothing whatsoever has been done to mitigate or diminish the boredom of childbirth. If they can make invisible waves bring sounds, and some say soon pictures, across great distances, and if they can take the heart out and put it back again, why in God's name can't they do something about the womb of the human woman? What has been the practical use of all this progress through the centuries? I protest. After that, she laughed and rang a bell. A nurse came in. Dorothy lifted an imperious and well-arched eyebrow. "Bring in the child," she said. At Twin Farms, Hal sent Michael and his nurse off to another building, which also allowed Dorothy to get back to work. Then their lives changed again, as Hal became the first American to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. A friend would watch over Michael, and the trip to Sweden would allow Dorothy to return to Europe, where a lot was happening. Stalin's purges had cured her of any naivete about communism. She wrote, "The only international which seems to be winning," she wrote, "is the international of the anti-internationalists." In Germany, the Nazis had gotten 6 million votes and banks were failing. Every conversation I had with anyone under the age of 30, she wrote, ended with this phrase, "Es kann nicht weiter, es muss etwas geschehen." Something had to happen. On her return, President Hoover consulted her. Her articles were getting more and more acclaim, and soon she would interview Hitler himself for Cosmopolitan. One cannot carry on a conversation with Adolf Hitler. He always speaks as though he were addressing a mass meeting. In personal intercourse, he is shy, almost embarrassed. In every question, he seeks for a theme that will set him off. Then his eyes focus in some far corner of the room. A hysterical note creeps into his voice, which rises sometimes almost to a scream. He gives the impression of a man in a trance. He bangs the table. He is formless, almost faceless, a man whose countenance is a caricature, a man whose framework seems cartilaginous, without bones. He is inconsequent and voluble, ill-poised, insecure. He's the very prototype of the little man. The piece would haunt her forever. For the 1932, that's Hal. For the 1932 winter holidays, she invited all of her friends to come stay at a villa in Semmering. For once, Hal was off the booze, and she wrote to a friend, "My life is all up and down. When it's down, I can't write. And when it's up, I'm so busy holding on to its upness. Just now and for weeks, it's been up." Soon, however, it would be upside down because she fell for one of her guests. Do you want to guess who? Come on, someone.
The dog.
The woman holding the dog, yes, exactly. Krista Winslow, the artist and writer who'd shot to fame with her play and book that became Mädchen in Uniform. In her diary, Dorothy wrote, "Immediately I felt a strange, soft feeling of being at home, an enveloping warmth and sweetness like a drowsy bath, only to be near her, to touch her when I went by. She has a quite simple, unconscious way of kissing the inside of one's arm. I say she has a way, she only did it once." She'd had crushes on women before, but intense ones even, but never like this. Hal, meanwhile, was getting worse, actually hitting her and Michael for the first time, but it was another 9 years before they divorced. She was in Berlin when the Reichstag burned, and though the American press was trying to stick to their sort of both sides model, Dorothy disproved any claims of atrocity propaganda for the Saturday Evening Post, and in more gruesome detail for the Jewish Daily Bulletin. She confirmed 370 cases of torture in Berlin alone. In Vienna, she wrote, the atmosphere had gotten so poisonous that it even drifted in through closed doors into one's writing room like a poison gas, a diseased germ, or a bad smell. It looks as though Austria will also soon go Nazi. When she returned to New York, she brought Krista along and quickly became America's most vocal anti-Nazi. She was diagnosed with diabetes, but back to Germany she went, just missing the Night of Long Knives as she was driving into the country. Passing a camp for 6,000 Hitler Youth boys, she wrote, an enormous banner stretched across the hillside dominated the camp. There was a swastika painted on it, and besides that, only 7 words, 7 immense black words. We were born to die for Germany. One morning at the Adlon in Berlin, the Gestapo handed her a letter. She was no longer welcome in Germany, the first American journalist to be expelled from the country.
The real issue between the foreign correspondents and the German government concerns the nature of journalism. The German government allows its own press only to publish official news which it believes to be in support of the present regime. And it seems to have the attitude that the foreign press should also share this point of view. Now, we don't share it. We think it's the business of journalism to report everything that happens, regardless of whether it's to the glory or not of one regime or another, and as far as possible to represent every point of view in our reports.
At this point, she was still working on her transatlantic accent. It would get better. When she arrived in New York, she said, Germany has gone to war already, and the rest of the world simply doesn't believe it. Soon they'd call her Cassandra. Suddenly she was famous for her own sake, selling out lecture tours for audiences of thousands and producing a thrice-weekly column called On the Record, syndicated in up to 200 papers for the next 22 years. 3 columns a week. 22 years. By the late 1930s, it reached 8 to 10 million readers every issue, at which point she added a monthly column in Ladies' Home Journal, plus a weekly radio segment, one of the first women on air. Dorothy was everywhere. Her hair could get gone completely white, and as a friend joked, she was the only woman in history who's had her menopause in public and made it pay. Her columns called out white male supremacists, made the case for gun control, and sometimes decried the insanity of women's hats. I believe the place for mixing bowls is in the kitchen, and the place for crêpe Suzette is in the dining room, not on my head. It might come as a surprise that she identified as a libertarian. This is where you hiss. But it showed in her arguments against the New Deal. She saw signs of autocracy in Roosevelt. When he accepted the nomination for his second term and declared this generation of Americans has a date with destiny, she quipped, this generation better not make any blind dates. At the same time, she knew the Nazis and the fascists were winning because they chose to define key terms differently. They saw peace as a time to prepare for war, and she wrote, war as the necessary condition in which heroic nations reach their highest expression. And truth is not conformity with fact or fidelity to an accepted standard of abstract principle, but is quite frankly whatever may serve as an instrument of national policy. It was March 1936, and Hitler had just pinky promised he would never touch Austria or Czechoslovakia. Krista, meanwhile, had fallen in love with an opera singer, a bass, and Hal threatened to never see their son again if she wouldn't give him a divorce, which is wild emotional blackmail. But to her stepson, she wrote, "I have been desperately, agonizingly," this is a French report about her divorce, "I've been desperately, agonizingly unhappy, but as I told you once, I have no really great talent for it. I find that I continue remorselessly to be vastly interested in the spectacle of the world and profoundly moved by it, and deeply curious as to how it's all going to turn out." She and young Michael moved to a new place, which had plenty of typewriters and room for all the maids and secretaries, 3 of them, all called versions of Madeline, that kept Dorothy running, aside from the Benzedrine that she was taking a lot of at the time. Summers were spent in Mittel, Vermont, which was called that way at the time because so many European exiles and refugees were moving in. Dorothy herself was always collecting affidavits of support for someone looking for a visa into the US. The refugee issue had long been on her mind, and she'd reported on the Zionist project since her earliest days as a journalist, later campaigning for Chaim Weizmann, who would become Israel's first president. She also had a hand in the Evian conference, which had been convened to solve the European refugee problem after the Anschluss. It came to naught. Dorothy blamed nationalism, she wrote, which she wrote, was turning the world into a jungle, and the refugees are merely people forced to run away from one part of the jungle to another part of it. Their personal tragedy can only serve one great social purpose. They are and should be recognized as an advancing crowd shouting a great warning. The jungle is growing, and the jungle is on fire. And lest we forget, there were Nazis in America too. Dorothy crashed their Madison Square Garden rally, shouting bunk, 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 until the police escorted her out. Her predictions, the conquests of Czechoslovakia and Poland, the Hitler-Stalin Pact, were coming true, and Dorothy said, "I think it's one of the most incredible stories in history that a man could sit down and write in advance, as Hitler had done in Mein Kampf, exactly what he intended to do, and then step by step put his plan into operation. And that the statesmen of the world should continue to say to themselves, he doesn't really mean it. It doesn't make sense." Soon the Nazis took Denmark and Norway, and Dorothy sailed for Europe, meeting with the Pope and ending up in France as Holland was overrun. She toured the Maginot Line and fired off artillery herself, writing one for the Czechs and one for the Poles and one for the Norwegians and one for the Dutch, and then in the noise I lost track. In the crucial 1940 American election, she switched parties and endorsed Roosevelt, not the Republican candidate, her newspaper favorite. Though they tried to stop her column from running, they couldn't, and they ended up not renewing her contract. But she was quickly picked up elsewhere, and her audience actually grew. Roosevelt hired her as an advisor on foreign affairs in his campaign, and later she started broadcasting to Germany a propaganda effort called Listen, Hans. The 3rd floor of her new townhouse was her office with 9 telephones, an intercom, and dozens of strategic maps all over the walls. Katharine Hepburn actually lampooned her in a 1942 rom-com called Woman of the Year, which has beautiful outfits and terrible gender politics. Dorothy herself thought she would never fall in love again, let alone at 49, but one day this Czech refugee came by to paint her portrait, Maxime, the first not intimidated by her. Her 3rd husband, she called him the man I should have married in the first place. Though she'd been calling for the US to enter the war for months, the fact that they did for, quote, the usual nationalistic reasons after Pearl Harbor saddened her. This surprised some people, but they must not have been reading her very carefully, because by stressing the value and humanity of the other Germany, the ordinary citizens who weren't Nazis, she put herself to a thankless task. The war would cost her personally too. Krista was killed by mercenaries in France, and Wells, her stepson who enlisted in the army, was shot by a sniper. She was in Jerusalem to report on Palestine when Hitler fell and immediately traveled to Vienna, Berchtesgaden, Dachau, and the ruins of Berlin. She was suspicious of the Nuremberg trials, privately questioning why the Soviets' massacre at Katyn wasn't questioned, or Hiroshima, or Nagasaki, for that matter. She called publicly for laws against rearmament, against conscription. More controversially, her visits to the Middle East had shown her that the Zionist fantasy she'd been sold and that she'd actively campaigned for herself had become, quote, a recipe for perpetual war. After 1948, Israel's refusal to fix its borders or provide relief for the Palestinian refugees convinced her it had become an expansionist power. This, by the way, is footage from a 1950 documentary called Sands of Sorrow, in which Dorothy introduced and which she appeared. She started losing readers. The New York Post dropped her column and she was being canceled. I refuse to become an anti-Semite by appointment, she stated. I simply feel too old and too stubborn to yield to this kind of blackmail. Michael, oh, that's Michael. He married young, resulting in lovely grandchildren, but no end of strife as he couldn't stay faithful to the mother of his children, or sober, really. To maintain her ever busy, if more out-of-the-way lecture schedule, Dorothy still kept herself going with speed. She was going deaf, she underwent bowel surgery, and Maxim died of his third heart attack when he was 65. Soon after, she gave up her column. A year later, Dorothy suffered her first heart attack, in typical fashion, writing it up for Ladies' Home Journal. May I tell you about my heart attack? She finally gave up smoking, too, which is good. After her third heart attack, however, she refused to go to the hospital, flying to Lisbon to see her grandchildren instead. There, in a hotel, aged 67, she died on January 30th, 1961. She was buried beside Maxim. Dorothy was remarkably prescient, predicting with often terrifying accuracy the horrors we still face today. She was sometimes also blind to her own prejudice, for instance, never acknowledging America's enduring anti-black racism. If you want to know more about her, look no further than Peter Kurtz's massive biography, American Cassandra. Her friend Vincent Sheehan did a remarkable collection of her letters and diaries called Dorothy in Red. And then there's Deborah Cohen's Last Call at the Hotel Imperial about her and other foreign correspondents that I can also recommend. For the German readers, there's a new biography coming out in October, and the Christa Winslow one is also really good. I should give Dorothy the last word here. So here she is from a 1939 talk to journalists about writing contemporary history. After reminding them what we do not know in all countries is much greater than what we do know, she ended her talk on a note as clear-eyed as it is, I hope, hopeful. The picture that the great collective enterprise of journalism presents from day to day is inaccurate, influenced, oblique, and invariably percolated through subjective prejudices. Perhaps the most important thing about it is that it records not what is happening, but what a considerable group of fairly well-educated, pretty well-trained observers think is happening. That also is not without value. Perhaps somewhere in all the millions of words that are being written by journalists through this epoch, sometime somebody may find the essential clue. I think Dorothy found a few. Thank you.
I think it's time we move to the future, right? The award ceremony is coming soon, but let's first move to the future and some ideas about what that future might be. Marta?
Hello. First of all, thank you, Mieke, and to the FLAX Foundation board also to inviting me to this space. It's a very generous offer, and I know that. Feminist Futures. All right, so At the end of the last year, I concluded a study dedicated to contemporary feminist activism in Poland. It was part of the Kindle project that Mieke coordinates. As part of this project, together with my team from the University of Warsaw, we interviewed over 50 individuals. Our focus was on 3 areas of struggles: access to abortion, supporting refugees trapped on the Polish-Belarusian border, and the rights of queer people. One of the key topics of our conversations was the question of future. We were interested in understanding how those who are actively involved in feminist mobilizations every day think about what lies ahead. Today I will share some preliminary conclusions emerging from this material, and obviously these are few and selected observations which are closely anchored in the Polish context. And that is why, before I discuss the activist perspectives on future, I will first briefly introduce and problematize struggles that we examined. So first, abortion. Since 2020, Poland has had one of the most restrictive anti-abortion laws in Europe. Abortion is only allowed in 2 cases: when the health and life of the person are at risk, and when the pregnancy results from a crime. In reality, even under these circumstances, people face significant barriers to get abortion from public providers. In recent years, this led to deaths of women in hospitals. According to the Polish law, terminating own pregnancy is not a crime, no matter whether the procedure is made in Poland or abroad. Criminalization concerns assisting in abortion and providing abortion. And under these repressive conditions, which greatly isolate people who need or want to terminate their pregnancies, feminists are the only ones who provide and ensure the access to the procedure. They provide reliable information about how to terminate pregnancy, where to buy abortion pills, how to use them to carry out self-managed abortion at homes. They inform about the options available for terminating pregnancy abroad. They fight against abortion stigma, misinformation, and also warn against fraudulent websites which do not sell abortion pills, but after receiving money send paracetamol. Activists back funding for abortions when individuals lack money. They help women to organize travel for abortion in Austria, in Czech Republic, Germany, or the Netherlands. What they mainly do is about communication, staying in touch, offering emotional support, whether on phone or messaging apps. It's about answering all questions and concerns, alleviate fear, dispel anxieties, and offer congratulations when the procedure is complete. In the case of activists on the Polish-Belarusian border, the scenario is completely different. Activists are operating in the borderlands of eastern Poland. There, as a result of orchestrated actions by the regime of Lukashenko, thousands of people from the global south have been arriving, seeking refuge or a chance for a dignified life in Europe. Migrants cross the eastern border of the EU in irregular manner and continue their journey westward. The area in which they find themselves is a dense primeval forest, in some places under strict environmental protection. It means that it's filled with hundreds of fallen trees, wetlands, swamps, rivers, which are extremely difficult to cross and where it's extremely easy to get lost. While Belarusian border guards force people toward the Polish side, the Polish guards attempt to catch them and push back on the Belarusian territory. For over 3 years, the area has been officially declared under a state of emergency, and operations of humanitarian organizations have been completely restricted. In this case, the work of activists, some of whom are simply residents of the region, primarily involves assisting people who have gotten lost in a forest or become too weak to continue their journey. People get frozen, wet, dehydrated. They suffer from fractures, joint dislocations, cuts, bruises, malnutrition or food poisoning, hypothermia, and extreme exhaustion. The interventions are mainly about searching and finding for people in the forest and delivering medical first aid on a spot and providing essential things such as hot food, dry shoes, dry clothes, phones, and a lot of water. All of these actions are carried out in hiding. The third case concerns the rights of queer people who are in Poland among the social groups most at risk of stigmatization, exclusion, and violence in everyday life. Trans and non-binary inclusive healthcare is rare and hardly available, requiring significant financial resources. So queer activists primarily focus on mutual aid and community organizing, providing all kinds of necessary support and empowerment of LGBTQ people. It involves debunking myths and fake news on transitioning, translating up-to-date academic English-written sources on hormones intake and gender-affirming therapy, giving guidelines, practical guidance on taking injections safely, providing psychological support, sharing own experiences of transitions, recommending trusting sources of information and reliable health services. It's also about crowdfunding and making transitions financially accessible. What I want to highlight tonight is that in all these three domains, activists engage in work that address fundamental human needs related to health, well-being, and simply physical survival. They sustain and reproduce life. Their work is intimately connected with the materiality of human body, and at the level of actions, it relies on very ordinary, practical tasks. Dozens of people engage every day in practices that I define as illegitimate care. It refers to a specific form of life-making, building relationship, and undertaking caregiving that support the preservation of human health and life of those who in the given political context are constructed as undesirable, dangerous, immoral, or illegal, and that's why they are left behind or targeted by the state. So care becomes illegitimate and consequently subject to repression and punishment when it concerns individuals whose lives are regarded as inferior or, in the worst case, contradictory and threatening to the current interests of the neoliberal nation state. At the moment, there are two legal cases against illegitimate care in Poland. Justyna Wydrzyńska, an activist who provided abortion pills to Anna, a woman who experienced violence from her husband and sought to terminate her pregnancy, is facing up to 3 years in prison. A group of 5 individuals who provided humanitarian aid at the border to a 9-member family from Iraq, including 7 children, are facing up to 5 years in prisons, and both cases are under public prosecution. So in Poland, illegitimate care is primarily carried out by women and queer individuals who stand for absolute majority of those involved in those 3 struggles. Our interviewees openly call themselves as intersectional feminists, supporting abortion, black, racialized, and transgender lives are integral parts of the same ideological package. Activists are deeply aware of political mechanisms that unequally shape human vulnerability, harm, and violence. Intersectionality is not merely a programmatic declaration, but above all, a practical imperative. Some individuals, especially in smaller locations, remain simultaneously engaged in multiple struggles. One person living in a town in Western Poland who works daily in a local LGBTQ organization shared with us. But also, if someone needs to be driven to Germany for an abortion, or if we need an emergency contraception pill, the border is so close. The same goes for providing shelter to someone coming from the Polish-Belarusian border. So let's say we do many things. Now I will move to future and what I call polyphony crisis. So conversation with activists revealed the future as a time marked by crisis, endangered future, under the condition that one of the interviews described as small end of the world, the future kisses to be smooth extension of the present. It is not simply tomorrow, which comes after today, which naturally evolves from today. By contrast, this future is marked by rupture. Suddenly, the flow of events changes, breaks down, and the entire future comes into question. no one knows what will happen next. The future is no longer full of possibilities, but becomes of a container for many things that can go wrong. So in times of crisis, the future also drastically shortens. The time horizon contracts to the next few hours, just one or few days. Time accelerates. The future becomes urgent, determined by what is happening right now. In this brief and dense perspective, when everything is at stake, as one of our interviewees points out, it's really difficult to determine whether what is being done concerns the future or more the present. What matters is reaction here and now, a direct intervention into the flow of events to avoid the danger, to course correct. Sorry for this. So futures are preconditioned. It's an obvious thing, but futures are preconditions and pre-structured. And because of the global pressures of capitalism, misogyny, racism, homo and transphobia, climate disaster, ableist regimes, human vulnerabilities are distributed within our societies in extremely unequal way. So we can say that the futures at risk are not synchronized, while for many the question of what lies ahead may represent an intellectual challenge or a social pastime or a topic for a nice evening gathering. For others, it's a matter of sheer survival. Feminist activists seize this polyphony, they acknowledge it, the polyphony of crisis as they are unfolding. One feminist recalls the end of February 2022, the time when Putin's Russia attacked Ukraine. She was traveling by train on a long-awaited holiday. The conductor walked through the carriage asking if there were any people from Ukraine, informing that those fleeing the war were exempt from buying tickets. Our interviewer recalled the thought that crossed her mind. I'm sitting here, going on a holiday, and someone else is fleeing from war and doesn't even know where to go. It's just about direction to the west. They do not know what's next. They do not know what's the future. And when asked about what awaits us in the future, most activists expect no positive changes. But maybe this is something, of the Polish culture, so. So they attribute this rather pessimistic or really negative beliefs to political realism. They say, we are simply watching reality. We have no illusions. They spontaneously refer in interviews to the EU migration policy, climate catastrophe, the regime of Putin, genocide in Gaza, or the election of Donald Trump, and they say, the governments are in any way on the side of the people. Feminism does not win, patriarchy does not fall, we are far from overthrowing capitalism. So activists notice also dystopian scenarios materializing before our eyes. The issues they dealt with also, in case of Poland, have remained unchanged for years. Some of them bid farewell to past dreams, no longer believing that they will see any of those big changes in their lifetime. One queer person says, when I was 13, I thought by the time I was 25, we would have civil partnerships and I would be able to get married. But now I'm 33, and what? There is nothing here. At the same time, however, and this is crucial, all of those pessimist activists, they almost immediately add, with full awareness that everything could fall apart, I don't give up on acting. I share resignation, but I just do what I can to help myself and others. For them, it becomes impossible to stop when certain things are still unresolved. Referring to this no future mode, one of the activists directly says, I do things despite that. This observation is of fundamental importance as it goes against intellectual, theoretical, but also popular conventions. Fatalism or pessimism about the future, the expected disaster, and the feeling that little can be done to avoid it, does not have to imply political withdrawal. Our research shows that the simplified division between those who have hope and those who have lost it does not offer sufficient explanation when it comes to political resistance. Being optimistic, smiley shiny, having hope is not necessary to engage in feminist struggles. What is crucial is a readiness to do the labor, continue despite all the obstacles and setbacks, despite all kinds of risks and fear. The ethos of reacting to harm, refusing to remain passive in the face of injustice, and political solidarity, a sense of responsibility for fellow citizens and non-citizens, simply humans, opposing the idea that there are those among us who do not deserve our care, play much more significant role in activating political dissent. Okay, but what is the political value of these often invisible feminist mobilizations? What kind of impact does the everyday work being done by activists bring about? The narrative of those directly engaged in illegitimate care paint a rather modest picture. They describe what they do as microscale, working behind the scenes, small steps. The interventions as practical, tangible, sometimes very short term. It seems to me that these self-evaluations come from tacitly assumed juxtaposition with conventional imagination of what is big in politics. Loud white men in suits, TV shows, camera lights, elections, legal reforms, or mediatized crowds. But a different angle is possible to see this activism. And I suggest here adopting a critical topographical perspective. It views the subjects located in a given physical space through a dense web of overlapping and intertwined physical, political, social, and cultural conditions. Although these interdependent elements originate from very different geographical scales, they operate in this one place together, configuring particular spaces and their material embodied effects. So, for example, the critical topography of the Polish-Belarusian border includes the physical landscape, the natural environment called by migrants Polish jungle, Polish legal regulation resulting from the state of emergency, the current political context of ongoing presidential elections and a presidential campaign in Poland, military threats from Russia and the ongoing war in Ukraine, neo-colonial visa regimes and racist asylum policies, and lastly, global capitalism that drives militarism and extraction of fossil fuels and destroys living conditions of millions of people in the global south and thus creates like a meaningful impetus for massive migrations. So this list is obviously not exhaustive, it's just a glimpse into how critical topography might be mapped. Similarly, we can think about topography of private spaces, like bathrooms in Poland, where individuals take abortion pills and hormones. I suggest this thinking exercise to ignite our imagination about the forces that intersectional feminists resist on a regular basis. Every abortion, every human life safe in the forest, every proud, happy, queer, trans life in Poland is a victory over extraordinary powers. It's a battle effectively won under conditions of extreme disparity in financial, political, and symbolic capital. And in the light of this perspective, feminist activism shows incredible resilience and perseverance, and it fully shines. Its unusual strength is also reflected in numbers. Without any support from public funds, last year, abortion activists from Abortion Without Borders helped with 47,000 abortions, including organizing nearly 1,500 trips abroad for people from Poland. Since the beginning of the humanitarian crisis at the Polish-Belarusian border, assistance has been provided to over 14,000 of people from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Sudan, Yemen, and so on. After so-called LGBT free zones started emerging in Poland as a government at that time initiative, queer community across the country mobilized for organizing pride marches. The number of towns where public affirmation of queer life and gay pride has been possible for at least one day a year has increased from 7 to 50. The smallest town where the Pride March took place last year had fewer than 10,000 residents. And the last remark. Sociology of social movements teaches us that one of the most important things that any social movement can achieve is the creation of resources that enable future mobilization to come and thrive. These resources involve not only material objects or money, but mostly knowledge, practical skills and tactics, social connections, and attitudes of engagement and disobedience. The courage to stand up, to go to the streets, to gather with others. Through everyday work, feminist activism creates powerful social infrastructures of resistance and care, which are indispensable in the times of crisis. So with each single oppositional practice, the potential for future resistance grows. And this is a safeguard. It's a lifeline thrown by dozens of anonymous activists from the present into our future. Thank you very much. Huh?
I'm sure we would all like to now talk about it and pause and discuss and think about it, but we'll have to do that later on because we move on. I think I feel the need to stretch a bit, so please, I know these chairs for a long time. I've been here for 20 years, the chairs have not changed, and the way people deal with them was always like it is right now. So I do see the need that. So if you feel you need to stand up for a moment, do so by all means, right? Make yourself as comfortable as possible. I think we'll move to the Emma Goldman Snowball Awards first. And it's always difficult in which order we should do that, because there is 15 very individual and incomparable, amazing people. So we use the alphabet, and we use it in different ways. So for the Snowball Awardees, we will start with the A. Then we move up the alphabet, and then when at the end of it, we start with the last one in the alphabet for the Emma Goldman Awards. So you can check out for yourself, and we do the first names, right? Because I'm a V person, I'm always last, so I know that you're all stuck with the letters that you have, so we're not going to do that. So the first person that I'm very happy to celebrate tonight is Angela Kökser, who I happen to know, nominated by Esther Varsa, who's also here. And she's a scholar and activist of Romani origin in Hungary. She's been working tirelessly and against racial oppression and discrimination against Roma, combining community engagement, policy making, in-depth participatory research. She's been director of a human rights education program at the European Roma Rights Center, founded the Roma Versitas program in Budapest that offered support to Roma students. She did receive some awards, but we don't hold that against anyone. Most lately, if for all these people I have to mention all these books or everything that they have done, this is not possible. No, so bear with me. Dive into them. You'll see their names. You can check them later. They will be on the website. So she received the Beth Rickey Award from the Bard Center for the Study of Hate, of which there is too much, as we all know. She's assistant professor of Romani Studies, chair of Romani Studies program, academic director of the Roma Graduate Preparation Program at CU. And a decade ago, she was PI of the institutionalization of Romani politics after 1989 in Hungary. She focuses on the intersections of gender, ethnicity, and class, and on the social and legal inequalities faced by Roma in various European countries. She's published widely, co-edited widely and internationally, not just academically, but also in the format of thematic policy papers. If you want to read something, you could read her 2020 book with Huub van Baar on the Roma and their struggle for identity in contemporary Europe. Ajla, can I call you up? Thank you. I think we, yes, yes. I think they're called Snowball for various reasons, and you're all cordially invited to invite more reasons. So one is that they're snowballed on from an Emma Goldman awardee, and the other one is that they function as snowballs. So we don't know yet where they will roll, but roll they will, and get bigger in the process. So you can also, in the face of all this evil, throw them at people, right? It might at least annoy them. So next up, I want to introduce to you Julia Garofalo-Geymonat. Yes. She's nominated by Teresa Degenhardt. She's a research grant holder at Ca' Foscari University in Venice. She's a shining light in the feminist movement in Italy. We need many shining lights in Italy. For her activism, leadership, public spirit, her originality in her research on sex work, migration, rainbow families. Her research in collaboration with sex workers involving migrants and queer individuals highlights the lived experiences of individuals in this field and the violence they endure. It addresses stigmatization, disability, mental health, sex worker unionization in contexts like Italy, the Netherlands, France, Switzerland, Sweden, London. It's not just Dorothy Thompson that travels, right? A lot of these people here do that too. Her research on sex services for people with disabilities in Sweden examines sex work related to caregiving and therapeutic practices, reflecting on sexuality and access to it. She's led a personal, political, and civil campaign advocating for the rights of rainbow families linked to her own experiences, including a TED Talk for the people that want the quick stuff, right? You can find that somewhere. The campaign has taken legal challenges up to the highest courts, and including the Court of Cassation, Constitutional Court, European Court of Human Rights. And I'm not sure that's concluded. It's ongoing, I think. No, it's finished? I'm sorry. She's been actively involved in feminist politics across Europe, a member of the, for some people, famous Bologna feminist collective Sexy Shock. You can imagine what they do. If there's something they don't do, maybe they will pick it up. And the sex worker collective Ombre Rosse. Can I invite you up? Can I offer you this? Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations. I will put it here. I think our next Snowball awardee, unfortunately, and this is part of who she is, has not gotten the visa that she should have gotten to be able to come here. So this is Islam Al-Khatib. Very happy that you can join us in this way. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Islam is nominated by Akansha Mehta, and she's a Palestinian refugee from Lebanon, now in the UK since 2021. a PhD candidate at LSE. I mean, that's already no small feat, right? In the Department of Methodology. She's seeking to co-create community-driven research infrastructures that center people's own knowledge and examines surveillance as an academic infrastructure at work in research methodologies on marginalized communities, such as the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. So it's both a methodological intervention and an act of counter-researching academia. This project is part of a wider interest in how cyber, digital, and defense infrastructures entrench fascist, colonial, and imperial projects. Her feminist work has focused on organizing, researching, writing, bringing communities together, and particularly building links between Europe and the Middle East, so-called Middle East, no? She works with various feminist organizations in Lebanon and in the diaspora around the world, is a prolific writer, commentator, speaker, facilitator. Her blog in the series Palestine Uncovered, Uncensored, entitled Becoming Monsters, What Happens When the Witness Becomes the Defendant, argues rightly that the focus on appealing to an international audience has moderated and censored how Palestinians can imagine their fight for freedom. Thus she argues that Palestinians must break out of the Western discursive frameworks that police their thinking about achieving liberation. I hope I understood you to some extent, Islam. And I want to
Brilliantly.
I want to congratulate you from the bottom of my heart with your Snowball Award. And I hope you will find the strength to finish this PhD and continue all the work you're doing. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. We will send the award to her and hope to meet her in better times, right? So next up is Monika Borys. We are going back to Poland. It's not the only time we're going back to Poland tonight. Monika Borys is nominated by Eva Majewska, a former OD that's present tonight. Is an independent feminist researcher and cultural studies scholar. So we're also going to touch a bit lighter note, on one way. Her recent dissertation examined the representation of popular classes in Polish popular culture. She explores contemporary culture through an intersectional lens of class and gender, with a particular focus on aesthetics and social inequalities. Her much acclaimed popular 2019 book, Polish Gimmick, Disco Poli and Disco Polo, I should listen to it, right? And the 90s is the first comprehensive Polish study of the popular yet marginalized genre of disco polo music, which he analyzed as an element of post-communist transformation after 1989. The book opened a general debate in Polish media and academia alike about exclusions and marginalizations, not just of the popular genre of music disco polo, but about rural or backward people more broadly. Her acute yet often humorous interventions in that debate fulfill the best standards of public intellectuals' involvement in the eradication of social inequalities. She's the recipient of the artistic scholarship of the mayor of Białystok. And in addition to her academic pursuits, it's amazing, no, that these people then also do that, no? She's an active cultural critic, contributing articles to journals and periodicals. Currently a freelance academic and cultural critic, she writes for the Warsaw Cultural Observatory, commenting on art and cultural events. And I'm sure we would all love to be able to understand what you write in them, right? So, please. Congratulations. And the alphabet tells us that we stay in Poland, because next up is Natalia Broniaczyk. And it's very good also that Marta mentioned some of the things that Natalia is being linked to. She's been nominated by Kasia Wernicka, who couldn't be here tonight. She's one of the most influential figures. Not that it is like a personality thing, no? But I mean, there's always people that drive a bit more than other people. In contemporary Polish abortion activism, she's a feminist, a social scientist, a publicist, whose work has profoundly shaped the discourse on reproductive rights in Poland. She's researched abortion from sociological and legal perspectives, bringing critical insights into the lived experiences of those seeking reproductive care. But it is her activism that has made her a household name, as she is the co-founder of two groundbreaking organizations, the Abortion Dream Team and the Abortion Without Borders. Abortion Dream Team is that one that has played a transformational role in shifting the Polish narrative about abortion. And this radical reframing of what is abortion originated in this group, culminating in this now iconic slogan, "Abortion is okay," which had immense impact, challenging deeply entrenched stigma around abortion and changing public perception. In addition to her advocacy within Poland, she co-founded Abortion Without Borders, a transnational network that helps Polish people access abortion services in other countries. We heard about that also. Most recently, and I think this has just opened, Natalia has been instrumental in establishing Abotak, Poland's first abortion clinic, a historical breakthrough for reproductive rights in this country. And through her fearless activism and unwavering commitment, she continues to be a driving force in the Polish feminist movement, making real and tangible change in the fight for abortion access. She got an award. The European Union noticed some activities, so she got an award from the European Union for her work on abortion rights. We are very happy that we can celebrate you here tonight also. Thank you. Thank you for all you've done. I can tell you also, like in the board, we are equally like blown away, always, when finding people and when through nominations that are sent to us. So it's we move up north, high north. We move to Polina Fyodorov, nominated by Eva Maria Fjellham. She's a Skål Sami theater director, filmmaker, feminist and queer activist, artistic researcher, and land guardian from the Finnish-Russian side of Sapmi, the Sami homelands. She has been working to call out injustices by the logging industry, which causes deforestation on Sami reindeer herding land and destruction of river ecosystems and ancestral Sami fishing practices. Her work centers around anti-colonial critique and praxis, advocating for indigenous feminism, Sami ancestral livelihoods and knowledges, and LGBTQ visibility. She uses diverse artistic representations as main working method. This work is based on research and deep knowledge, and she uses intergenerational approaches to build and disseminate knowledge, engaging with creative methods and scholarly work to protect the Sami ancestral landscape. Her work is powerfully situated in an indigenous feminist and queer positionality, challenging positivist and conventional academic knowledge production as she provides other wise forms of knowledge, methodologies and dissemination in a still colonial Nordic Russian Sami context. Her activities are many: filmmaking, performing, poetry, book contributions, and in 2022 she took part in shaping and performing matriarchy at the Sami Pavilion at the 59th Biennale in Venice. This was for the first time in history that the Nordic pavilion was transformed into the Sami Pavilion. So sometimes we have a long way to go in Europe. Paulina? Congratulations. Thank you. We come to the last Snowball Award, and then we can stretch a little bit, and then we move to the others. The last Snowball Award goes to Tamara Slobina, nominated by Tamara Marcinyuk. And Tamara is an important person in the history of Ukrainian feminism. With a PhD in philosophy and editor-in-chief position at Gender in Detail. Don't we want to know all the details of gender? She is a great role model for young women in Ukraine in successfully combining education, expertise, and activism to promote gender equality, non-discrimination, and human rights. This educational background, civic activism experience, communication skills make Tamara a leader in women's rights and gender equality. She has 20 years of experience in doing this in Ukraine. For those people, I mean, they're probably never at this institute that would think that this is like new. No? I mean, obviously not. So, in particular, her 2008 project, Feminism is the first successful and visible attempt to popularize feminism in Ukraine. This Feminism is a fun comic book consisting of 20 drawings, similar to an existing Love Is series. So it was playing on that. And as an active team player, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Gender in Details, she drives this leading scientific and journalistic online resource on equal rights and opportunities for women and men, collaborating with a wide range of feminism across Ukraine. It's not that she just thought, no, I shouldn't depart from this text, no? Then the verbs and the subjects get all mixed up. Tamara not just understands the specifics of multiple discrimination, she centers the importance of an intersectional critical perspective in her public message. And I like this quote of her. We have to make society emancipated during the war to come out not only as winners, but also as equals. So, Tamara. Thank you. Congratulations. I think probably other parts of the world are also amazing territories to find great people in, but I keep being amazed by the richdom of engaged scholarship and activism and public intellectuals that are in Europe. And of course we need more of them, but we do that by snowballing something, no? And Marta has reminded us that the fact that actions are small scale or micro scale doesn't mean they cannot have larger impact, no? So we hope for that too. So this is the stretching part, no? I mean, we really need to do that because it's, I promise you, these chairs are not the best. So let's move to the Emma Goldman Awards, of which this year we have 8. We've had 6 and 7 in the past, but with growing needs came more awards, apparently. And we start with the N. No, we start in reverse order. We will end with the A, because then the circle is like closed, no? So we start with Naya. No, Naya will come, I'm sure. Yeah. think we do this always because, we have many different types of names in Europe, so it's easier if you see it, and then also you can take a quick picture. So Naya Dierendom-Graugaard is associate professor at the Department of Nordic Studies and Linguistics at Copenhagen University, previous at Argos. And she's a Danish Kalalek or Inuk researcher with expertise in past and present colonial relations between Denmark and Kalalit Nunaat. I hope really I pronounced that more or less, which commonly is known as Greenland, for those of you. Her research attends to alternative decolonial and indigenous narratives, Kalalit lived experiences, and Inuit knowledge systems. Her current postdoctoral research investigates the transformative role of play and humor in Kalalit Inuit art and cultural productions. Already in 2009, she published a working paper on national identity in Greenland in the age of self-government. It's like 16 years ago. Sometimes I don't understand time. If this is published, what happened? No? And in 2018, co-authored a paper on diversification strategies for the existing dependency relations of Greenland as a way to put coloniality behind. She does on auto-reflexive, arts-based, collaborative approaches to research to unsettle and decolonize research. She published poetic, theatrical, and autobiographical writings that shed light on the intergenerational experiences of colonization, racialization, and resurgence in mixed indigenous families in Denmark. She also participates in different forms of public dissemination on Nordic colonial histories through debate, workshop facilitation, performance, and video logs. And I had a short exchange with her on a phone and over email, because as many of you that are here and that are active in the public sphere, it doesn't come always easily, and you can really become in the crosshairs and be attacked from all sides. So for her role in one of a documentary, she's been viciously attacked recently, and also didn't receive, I think, in Denmark, the support that she would have needed. No? So her most recent publication that I want to flag is The Silenced Genocide, Why the Danish Intrauterine Device Enforcement in Kalalit Nunaat Calls for an Intersectional Decolonial Analysis. So as they did in many other countries, hegemonic forces have more or less forced women to be sterilized or be non-reproductive in order to diminish their numbers and their power. So I didn't know this, and I think many people still don't. So thank you, and can I come? It's well deserved. Congratulations. I'm happy that you're here. So tonight there is actually two people that aren't present. This is not a visa problem. It's a person from my country, Munir Samuel, but is an independent public intellectual that couldn't get rid of one of those obligations that he had. So this is Munir, and Munir became a famous young commentator on Dutch TV and radio during the Egyptian uprising against Mubarak in 2011. Then he was very young, because he's still very young. He's an independent, multidisciplinary artist, journalist, author, documentary filmmaker, museum curator, and cultural entrepreneur, working on the cutting edge of politics, media, climate, culture, art, language, gender, religion, and geography. He's incredibly productive. Notorious for his work on social change, he's considered one of the most provocative thought leaders in the Netherlands. Wink magazine even have him the honorary title Changemaker of the Decade. In search of answers to the big questions of our times, Munir has written 14 books. I mean, from fiction to non-fiction, poetry to essays, addressing a wide variety of themes, I named some of them, using an intersectional and almost also interdisciplinary approach. He has a background in political science. He's both Dutch and Egyptian. He's a strong advocate for acknowledging and embracing one's multiple identities to conclusively transcend them altogether, he then says. One of his most recent books is You Can't Say Anything Anymore, New Language for a New Era, in which he also performed. I attended one of these evenings where he was complaining about language and attacking people on language and attacking himself on the language that he was using as an incredible hyper-mobile speaker. But in that book, he presents a blueprint for a value-based language that would be truly safe and inclusive and accessible, and at the same time, in his performances, he shows how difficult that actually is, right? So he also wrote a book on the climate catastrophe called Jonah Without the Whale, and this is the topic this is the book that he wants people most to read, but people choose the other books predominantly. It's a prophecy for the Netherlands, this Jonah Without a Whale, a crash course for the climate catastrophe and its impact on the Netherlands and the neighboring countries. Yeah, I think it's very sad that he's not here tonight. I think he cannot also be on Zoom because he's on his way here. He will be here tomorrow. So we couldn't call him in. And we're still very happy that he will be there tomorrow and he will receive his award tomorrow. So you've seen his picture, so you can find him. Next is, we go back to Poland. We try to diversify, but sometimes. Margaret Amaka Ohai Nowak is assistant professor at the Institute of Communication and Media Studies at the Marie Curie Sklodowska University in Lublin in Poland, and also a lecturer in women and gender studies at the University of Łódź, which is one of the oldest women and gender studies programs, no? In Łódź? It's an old one.
There is a Center for Women's Studies,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
the program itself is not very
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
one of the few.
Yeah. Her work lies at the crossroads of academia, civil education, and racial justice activism. Since 2009, she's been an advocate for Black, African, and Afro-descendant communities and been involved in many initiatives and projects to promote equity and cultural awareness and create spaces for radical community care. She's an absolutely unique scholar and Black justice activist, a pioneer of anti-racist feminist in Poland, deeply devoted and successful Black Poles community organizer and a feminist leader. She's an amazing movement educator. She combines an academic career. I keep being amazed by how people manage to do that. I had trouble enough with just the academic part of this, with public engagement and a strong activist spirit, employing strategies and methods of Black and intersectional feminism. And this is all the more remarkable as she does not belong to the Warsaw-centered feminist circles, but works at one of the peripheral Polish universities. As a person, she doesn't just talk or write, she walks the talk, despite the fact that as the only widely known Black female social science scholar in Poland, and one of only several Black and non-Polish Polish feminists, her position is extremely uneasy and demanding. Yet, she is highly valued for her respectful generosity towards younger Black Poles, mainly from outside of academia, and her clear and ultimately very political, empowering stance. Congratulations. because of what you do, right? We're already at the B, but we still have a couple of people to go because we don't control the letters. We have a lot of A's this year, so I stick with the B for now. I should put them in the right order. Jara Khan. She's a Ghanaian Italian writer, feminist, blogger, and cultural and social media activist and artist. She's one of the most lucid and cutting voices in Italy, investigating the workings of sexist, racist, and classist systems of domination and their articulations. She grew up in a reception center for refugees in Castelvolturno, like close to Naples. And as a child, she observed the world of associations and NGOs and all the power struggles between those who helped and those who are helped, between whites and non-whites. In 2019, she published a short story in the anthology Future. 2020, she published her first book, Thieves of Teeth, a collection of short stories focusing on fictional, personal, critical text on structural racism and sexism, the persistence of colonial stereotypes in an Italian collective imaginary, and the need to deploy an intersectional perspective and to fight discriminations. She's published widely, and some of these magazines, even if you're not Italian, you might hear from what they're called, what they are. No? I will mention the ones that think resonate here. Magazine Rosa Luxemburg, anyone? Jacobin Italia, anyone? La Repubblica. And with others, she launched a Facebook live stream series. It's called Non me nero accorta, which means I didn't notice, which is a play on the expression non me nero accorto, meaning I didn't notice, but nero, like didn't, also you can skip the apostrophe and then it means black, in which the authors converse about racism, intersectionality, black subjectivities, culture, and literature. So she's very good with language as well. She's one of the most interesting intellectuals in the contemporary Italian cultural landscape when it comes to issues of structural discrimination. She brought such issues also to the stage of the Internazionale Festival in Ferrara in 2020 and the Più Libri Più Liberi publishing fair in Rome in 2021. She's one of the leading young intellectuals in Italy who took the floor to speak about the workings of inequality in Italy as governed by a neo-fascist party. So I'm very happy that we can honor you tonight and give you the award. Thank you. Thank you. Kisses. We moved to Spain from Italy. We stay in the south, but not only. Bruna Cristina Giacchetto Pereira, she's a postdoctoral researcher in social and political science at University Complutense in Madrid and a member of their research group on gender and politics. With a master in sociology from Brazil, from the University of Brasilia, she visited the University of California with a Fulbright fellowship and then got her PhD back in Brazil again, more or less 6 years ago, something like that. Here in Spain, she's part of the UNICEF project on gender-based violence in universities and research organizations in Europe, and of the Intersect J project, taking the intersectional perspective on sexual harassment against women from racial, ethnic minority and immigrant backgrounds in universities and research organizations in Spain. But while the opportunities for scholarly positions that she has found in Europe have been mostly on gender equality in academia, that's where the grants are, and it's not that it's bad work. Her potential shows more strongly in the work that she has done in Brazil. She is the author of books on domestic violence against Black women, on affective sexual experiences of Black women. She published on digital Black feminist activism in Brazil, on Black women in Latin America and the Caribbean, on critical research and perspectives, on Black women's activists, on intergenerational dialogues, on the Brazil 2022 election. Was it 6 years ago, the dissertation you say? So her most recent articles are on Brazilian Black women's resistance in the era of Bolsonaro far-right government with Macarena Aguiar, and on uses and possibilities for intersectionality. And at the Universidade de Brasilia, she founded and coordinated the Grupo de Estudios Mujeres Negras. We understand that. And she taught sociology and international relations. I think she's here to remind us that we might be obsessed by Trump, we might be obsessed by all these evil people here, but actually in other parts of the world they have experience with evil people too. And maybe we could learn from them, right? Can we? Congratulations. I hope you have a good time with it. And now the A's, of which we have 3. Yeah. I can still count. Are you still alive and such? Or are you still, like, are you thinking like flying? Didn't I fly? Why is it not flying here? Something? No? It's okay? Ashan Azur. Ashan did get a visa and could come here. And we're very happy for that. Ashan is an academic whose work demonstrates engagement with feminist and inequality issues for sure. She's based in the UK at the moment. She tries to understand complex phenomena such as embodied protest, political subjectivity, incarceration, forced displacement, and decolonization. So she's multidisciplinary. Her groundbreaking scholarship has made substantial contributions and earning her significant recognition, most prominently through her book, Reclaiming Humanity in Palestinian Hunger Strikes, Political Subjectivity and Decolonizing the Body, 2021. It's a strong argument exploring how hunger strikes function as a form of embodied resistance. That was awarded the Palestine Book Award in 2022 and had a significant impact on gender studies and should have even more impact, and decolonial feminist theorizing. It rigorously deployed feminist methodologies and amplified marginalized voices in academic and public discourses. In addition to teaching across a range of UK universities, she's contributed cross-cultural exchanges through her work with Bearside University. And her ongoing work seeks to investigate the gendered experiences of forced displacement. I hope it will not be more relevant than it already is, employing feminist, intersectional, and decolonial methodologies grounded in the lived realities of women. Her ability to navigate and collect diverse academic, cultural, and social context highlight her commitment to the type of research you need to do to understand this. And within and beyond academia, she's been very vocal about the intersection of feminism and the Palestinian struggle, highlighting the need to move beyond empathy to embrace transnational solidarities. And this has been especially important in the face of ambivalence or antipathy, even within so-called feminist groupings in Europe, to remind us all of the foundations and the politics of feminism. Thank you for what you're doing, and can I offer you this award, please? You deserve it. This is the first Anna. But this Anna has a double name, Anna Esther Younes. She's an independent researcher and social critic, and I want to make a little side remark on that, because you might have noticed that I said independent researcher quite a few times tonight. And I think within the board there has been like a conscious decision, noticing that the space within university to do truly critical research has not grown. It has been restricted. So we have been actively looking for independent researchers also to provide them with more space for their work. So Anna Esther Younes is a scholar of race-critical theories using psychoanalytic approaches. We're in Vienna. We're fine here. No? And post-colonial theory. Not that Freud was right on too many things, maybe. In 2016, she received the summa cum laude for her thesis on race, colonialism, and the figure of the Jew in a new Germany from Geneva, no? She defines her work through the anthropological concept of researching home and researching up to power. She also holds the position of lay judge in Berlin's youth court and has founded and for several years organized the Colloquium of Color in Berlin. And I recently met a student that spoke very highly of you. I mean, that's just accidental. I mean, I probably could have met any of your students, but I met one of Anna's. Actively silenced in German academia, Anna Esther Younes studies the complicated issue of anti-Semitism in Germany and Palestine as a feminist issue, and the difficulties of decolonizing the humanitarian and international development sectors. And about the latter, she has also produced a series of videos. She is also vocal in a political campaign against the surveillance of scholars and activists, and you sure also do that as a lived experience, unfortunately. No? So can I please offer you this award? Congratulations. This is our last A now coming. And it's Anna Karastatis. And I know some people at the Institute here that have been bugging me for years, like, there's never been an awardee from Greece. I'm like, I know, I mean, I can also, but we're happy that we can give you the award. Anna Karastatis is internationally known for her work on intersectionality. She's a philosopher by training, and she became known through her monograph, Intersectionality, Origins, Contestations, Horizons. Back in Athens, Greece, she co-founded the Feminist Autonomous Research Center. So in that sense, I don't know if I have to call you an independent researcher, but it's a more institutional form of independent research, for which I was very happy to notice that. And this Feminist Autonomous Research Center describes itself as a collective exit from neoliberal academia, nourishing the autonomous roots of feminism. No? This is a space, this center is a space for learning, for reflection, collaboration, support, exchange, knowledge production, political interventions, and troublemaking. I took that from the website. It really says troublemaking. It's very theoretically founded, no? It goes with Donna Haraway, I think. Stay with the trouble. Working across and against nation-state and continental borders, disciplinary boundaries, and institutional barriers, they return to the feminist roots of autonomous knowledge production, challenging what counts as legitimate knowledge and who is granted the right to produce and receive it. They offer an open feminist library, an open access feminist micro-publishing project. Isn't that a fascinating concept? And much more. Co-leading FAC to become a thriving local community that also offers summer schools for international students and scholars, and has become partner in various EU-funded initiatives. That's also how I first met her, I think, online. Anna has continued her academic work and regularly publishes in Greek and English. She co-authored the book Reproducing Refugees, Photography of a Crisis, and has been cited widely. Her work on intersectionality has been complemented by an engagement with the gendered and racial politics of the EU borders. And currently she's a co-investigator on Resist, fostering queer feminist intersectional resistances against transnational anti-gender politics, of which we have a former awardee also in the project. And this is a sister project to the project that Marta and me and Petra and Connie are in, and Andrea, yeah. So Anna, can I? Voilà. Congratulations. So, is everyone feeling good? Did everyone get some hope that there are so many people that in so many different ways continue, go on, have initiated, will probably continue initiating, making trouble in places where trouble is needed. So I thank you all very much for coming. I thank all the awardees for the work they have been doing. As a small practical note, you notice that I took your awards from an envelope, and maybe it's practical to pick it up so that it's a bit protected. So I will leave them here, and it's up to you. You don't need to take them, but it can be, useful. And then I think this flying dinner and the drinks are waiting for us downstairs. And I hope to see you all here.